The Second World War was the biggest, most destructive, bloodiest war in history. Every continent was touched by the war.
The war ended 8 decades ago, but for many, the smoke never truly cleared. While history books give us the dates and the maps, they often gloss over the jagged edges, the moments where soldiers vanished into thin air, ships sailed into the blue and never returned, and treasures, worth empires, dissolved like ghosts. These aren't just cold cases. They are the haunting, unexplained echoes of a world in chaos, waiting for the light to finally find them. These are 20 unsolved World War II mysteries. 20. The Amber Room. The Amber Room was once hailed as the 8th wonder of the world.
Did you know that this entire room here, and here is made entirely amber?
A breathtaking chamber of 6 tons of gold-backed amber and precious gems gifted to Peter the Great. For centuries, it was the crown jewel of the Catherine Palace. But when the Wehrmacht moved toward Leningrad in 1941, the gold of the Tsars became a prime target. Despite Soviet efforts to hide the walls behind layers of wallpaper, the German soldiers discovered the treasure, dismantled it in 36 hours, and shipped it to Königsberg. It was displayed there until 1945. But as the Red Army closed in and Allied bombs rained down, the room vanished entirely. The official story is that the masterpiece was destroyed by fire during the bombings, yet no traces of burnt amber, which leaves a distinct residue, were ever found in the castle ruins. This absence of evidence sparked a decades-long hunt through salt mines, sunken shipwrecks, and secret bunkers across Europe. Some believe the crates were loaded onto the ill-fated Wilhelm Gustloff and now sit at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, while others suspect it was hidden by high-ranking officials to be used as a post-war insurance policy. To this day, the original panels remain one of the most expensive and haunting missing pieces of history, a ghost of an empire that simply dissolved into the smoke of a collapsing Reich. The disappearance of the world's most beautiful room was only the beginning of the era's great vanishings. 19. The Fate of Raoul Wallenberg. Raoul Wallenberg was a Swedish diplomat who became a beacon of hope in the darkest hours of the Holocaust. Operating in Budapest, he used unconventional methods, issuing protective passports and sheltering thousands of Jews in buildings he declared Swedish territory, to save nearly 100,000 lives from the Nazi death machine. However, as the Soviet Union liberated Hungary in early 1945, Wallenberg was summoned to the headquarters of the Red Army for unknown reasons. He went willingly, believing he was going to discuss the future of the refugees, but he was never seen as a free man again. The man who had outmaneuvered the SS could not escape the paranoia of the Soviet intelligence apparatus. For years, the Soviet government maintained a wall of silence before eventually claiming Wallenberg died of a heart attack in Lubyanka prison in 1947. This explanation was widely rejected by his family and international investigators, especially when reports from returning prisoners of war suggested he was seen alive in various gulags well into the 50s and 60s. Some theorize he was executed as a suspected American spy, while others believe he lived out a long, tragic life under an assumed name in a remote Siberian cell. 18. The Flight 19 disappearance. On the afternoon of December 5, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale for a routine training mission known as Navigation Problem Number 1. Led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the 14 airmen were experienced, and the weather was initially clear. However, a few hours into the flight, Taylor reported that his compasses had failed and that he was completely lost over the Florida Keys. Despite frantic radio contact, the squadron drifted further into the Atlantic as the sun set and a storm rolled in. The last transmission was a crackling signal indicating they were running dangerously low on fuel and would be forced to ditch in the churning waves. The mystery deepened when a PBM Mariner search plane, sent out that same evening to find the missing pilots, exploded in midair and vanished along with its 13-man crew. No wreckage, oil slicks, or bodies from any of the 6 aircraft were ever recovered. The Navy's official report stated the cause was unknown fueling the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. While skeptics point to pilot disorientation and mechanical failure, the total absence of physical evidence for 5 massive bombers remains an unsettling anomaly. 17. The mystery of the Blub 1241. In the chaotic weeks following Germany's surrender in May 1945, the Allied powers were on high alert for wolf packs that refused to stand down. One of the most persistent enigmas involves the U-boat known as Blub 1241, a vessel rumored to have been part of a secret convoy carrying high-ranking officials and looted wealth to South America. While hundreds of submarines were accounted for, reports surfaced from coastal villages in Argentina of a sleek, unidentified German subsurfacing near remote beaches under the cover of night. Witnesses described crates being offloaded and shadowy figures disappearing into the mainland long after the war had officially ceased on European soil. The mystery is compounded by the fact that several U-boats, like the U-530 and U-977, did eventually surrender in Mar del Plata months late, but their crews were tight-lipped about whether other vessels had been part of their journey. Naval historians have long debated if Blub 1241 was scuttled in deep waters to hide its cargo, or if it found a permanent home in a hidden cove along the rugged Patagonian coastline. If the submarine did land, it would mean that some of the Reich's most dangerous secrets escaped the net cast by the Allies. 16. The Awa Maru Treasure. The Awa Maru was a Japanese ocean liner that should have been untouchable. In 1945, it was operating under the protection of the International Red Cross, supposedly carrying only relief supplies for prisoners of war. Because of its safe passage status, it sailed with its lights blazing and white crosses painted on its hull. However, on a foggy April night, a U.S. submarine, the Queenfish, mistook it for a destroyer and sent 4 torpedoes into its side. The ship sank in just 2 minutes, taking over 2,000 people and a legendary secret to the bottom of the Taiwan Strait. Only one survivor was pulled from the water, and he remained silent about the ship's true cargo for the rest of his life. Rumors immediately swirled that the Awa Maru was not just a hospital ship, but a floating vault. It was whispered to be carrying billions of dollars in looted gold, platinum, and industrial diamonds destined for the Japanese mainland. Even more intriguing was the persistent theory that the ship held the remains of the Peking Man, a priceless collection of prehistoric fossils that vanished during the invasion of China. In the 70s, the Chinese government launched a massive salvage operation, but they claimed to have found no gold and no fossils, only scrap metal and rubber, shifting from the depths of the ocean to the heights of the sky. 15. The Ghost Plane of Pearl Harbor. On December 8, 1942, exactly 1 year and 1 day after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, radar operators in Hawaii picked up an unexpected signal. An unidentified aircraft was approaching from the direction of Japan. American interceptors scrambled to meet the intruder, expecting a fight, but what they found defied logic. It was a P-40 Warhawk, a model used by the Americans during the defense of the islands, but it was covered in bullet holes and lacked landing gear. The pilots reported seeing a man slumped in the cockpit, his face bloodied, waving feebly at them before the plane plummeted toward the ground. When the wreckage was located, the mystery only deepened. The pilot was nowhere to be found, despite the cockpit being splattered with fresh blood. Inside the plane, searchers found a diary and a pack of cigarettes, but no parachute. The plane itself was a technical impossibility. It was a model that hadn't been in service for months, and its fuel tanks were nearly empty, meaning it couldn't have flown from any known base. Some believe it was a pilot who had been hiding in enemy territory for a year, finally trying to come home in a salvaged craft, while others think it was a psychological trick. The pilot's body was never recovered, leaving the Ghost P-40 as one of the most chilling anomalies of the Hawaiian skies. 14. The Battle of Los Angeles. Just months after the United States entered the war, the city of Los Angeles was gripped by a night of pure, unadulterated chaos. On the night of February 24, 1942, air raid sirens wailed as searchlights pierced the sky, locking onto a mysterious, hovering object. the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade unleashed a massive barrage, firing over 1,400 anti-aircraft shells at the stationary target. Thousands of residents watched from their porches as the sky lit up with explosions. Yet despite the heavy fire, no wreckage was ever found. The enemy seemingly absorbed the hits and drifted away into the night, leaving the city in a state of terrified confusion. The aftermath was a mess of conflicting reports. Initially, the Navy dismissed it as a false alarm caused by war nerves, but the Army insisted that at least one unidentified aircraft had been present. Photos from the night show a glowing, saucer-shaped object caught in the convergence of 8 searchlights, surviving a direct battering of shrapnel. Theories ranged from Japanese fire balloons to secret experimental drones, but the Japanese military later confirmed they had no planes in the area that night. If it wasn't an enemy attack and it wasn't a weather balloon, the question remains, what was the United States military actually shooting at for 3 hours over one of its biggest cities? 13. The disappearance of the Cyclops. While technically vanishing just before the official start of World War II's largest naval escalations, the USS Cyclops and its sister ships set a terrifying precedent for wartime losses that couldn't be explained. The Cyclops was a massive collier, a 542-foot beast of a ship designed to haul coal and ore. In March 1918, while the world was still reeling from the First World War and shifting toward the tensions that would ignite the Second, the ship vanished between Barbados and Baltimore.
If a rogue wave had hit the Cyclops, I believe she would have quickly rolled and that she would have probably slipped below the surface and would eventually wind up at the seabed.
It was carrying over 10,000 tons of manganese ore and 306 souls. It didn't send a distress signal, and no debris, not a single life jacket or oil slick was ever spotted. What makes the Cyclops mystery so relevant to the shadow history of the war is the fate of its sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, which both vanished without a trace in the exact same region during the height of the 1941 Atlantic campaigns. All 3 ships were of the same design, and all 3 disappeared in the area now known as the Bermuda Triangle. While some historians argue that the heavy ore cargo caused structural failure, the total lack of wreckage for 3 massive vessels is statistically impossible. 12. The blood-stained mystery of Room 1046. While the world was mobilizing for total war in 1935, a bizarre incident in Kansas City hinted at the dark undercurrents of international espionage that would soon define the conflict. A man checking in under the alias Roland T. Owen was found brutally tortured and dying in his locked hotel room. He had no luggage, and the room was devoid of any identification. Before he succumbed to his injuries, he refused to name his attacker, simply whispering that he had fallen against the bathtub. The mystery deepened when a mysterious woman began calling his funeral home, and an anonymous donor paid for a lavish burial, claiming the man had been part of a special mission that had gone terribly wrong. The timing and the precision of the hit led many to believe that Owen was an operative for a pre-war intelligence ring, possibly linked to the burgeoning German or Soviet networks. His behavior in the days leading up to his death, sitting in a dark room with no lights and waiting for a man named Don, suggested a high-stakes rendezvous. Decades later, a woman identified him as her missing brother, but the details of his mission remained sealed. Room 1046 wasn't just a murder scene. It was a snapshot of the secret world of shadows that functioned beneath the surface of official diplomacy, proving that the silent war had begun long before the first shots were fired in Poland. 11. The lost gold of Yamashita. As the Empire of Japan realized the tide was turning in the Pacific, General Tomoyuki Yamashita allegedly oversaw one of the greatest heists in human history. The legend suggests that billions of dollars in gold bullion, ancient statues, and precious gems looted from across Southeast Asia were hidden in a complex network of tunnels and caves throughout the Philippine archipelago. To ensure the locations remained secret, the engineers who built the vaults were reportedly entombed alive within them. This Yamashita's gold was intended to fund a post-war rebuilding of the Japanese Empire, but the rapid American advance and Yamashita's eventual execution left the map to the treasure in shards. The mystery shifted from legend to legal drama in the 70s when a locksmith named Rogelio Rojas claimed to have found a hidden chamber containing a golden Buddha and crates of bullion. He alleged that the Philippine government, under Ferdinand Marcos, seized his find and tortured him to keep the location secret. While many dismiss the hoard as a fairy tale, the sheer volume of wealth that vanished from occupied territories during the war remains unaccounted for. 10. The mystery of the Foo Fighters. In the final years of the war, Allied pilots flying night missions over Germany and Japan began reporting a phenomenon that defied the physics of the era. They described glowing, metallic spheres or balls of fire that followed their aircraft with incredible speed and agility. These objects, dubbed Foo Fighters, were capable of making sharp turns at high velocities and appearing or disappearing in an instant. Initially, High Command feared the Axis powers had developed a revolutionary secret weapon designed to jam radar or intimidate air crews. But intelligence reports soon revealed that German and Japanese pilots were seeing the exact same things and fearing they were Allied technology. Despite hundreds of documented sightings from credible military witnesses, the phenomenon was never officially explained. Some scientists suggested they were St. Elmo's fire or electrostatic discharges from the wings of the planes, but pilots rejected this, noting that the objects moved with intelligent intent and appeared on radar. After the war, the Robertson panel investigated the reports but could reach no definitive conclusion, leaving the files classified for years. The Foo Fighters represent a rare moment where all sides of the global conflict were united by a shared, inexplicable terror in the sky, suggesting that during the chaos of war, something truly unknown was watching from the fringes of the atmosphere. 9. The death of Subhas Chandra Bose. Subhas Chandra Bose, the charismatic leader of the Indian National Army who sought to liberate India by aligning with the Axis powers, is officially recorded as having died in a plane crash in Taiwan in August 1945. According to the Japanese account, his bomber crashed shortly after takeoff, and Bose succumbed to third-degree burns in a military hospital. However, from the moment the news broke, his followers in India refused to believe it.
She further claimed that although Netaji initially survived the crash with serious burn injuries, it is widely believed that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose died in a plane crash in August 1945.
No photographs of his body were ever released. No official death certificate was filed at the time, and his ashes were kept in a temple in Japan, rather than being returned to his homeland for a public funeral. The mystery fueled a belief that Bose had faked his death to escape Allied capture and had fled to the Soviet Union to seek help for India's independence. For decades, rumors persisted that he had been seen in various parts of the world, or that he was living as a reclusive monk in northern India. Multiple government commissions were launched to investigate the Netaji mystery, with one even concluding that the plane crash was a scripted cover story. While the official stance remains that he died in 1945, the missing physical evidence and the geopolitical sensitivity of his survival make his final fate a lingering wound in the history of the decolonization era. Beneath the politics lie the secrets of the most infamous figures. 8. The Hess Flight to Scotland. In May 1941, the world was stunned when Rudolf Hess, the deputy Führer and Hitler's close confidant, stole a Messerschmitt Bf 110 and flew a solo 6-hour journey across the North Sea to Scotland. He parachuted into a farmer's field, claiming he was on a mission to negotiate a peace treaty with the Duke of Hamilton to end the war between Germany and Britain. Hitler immediately denounced him as a madman, while Churchill remained deeply suspicious, ordering Hess to be imprisoned for the remainder of the war. The central mystery remains: was Hess acting on Hitler's secret orders to avoid a two-front war, or was he truly a rogue actor influenced by the occult and a crumbling psyche? The British intelligence files on the Hess affair were sealed for decades, fueling theories that the man who died in Spandau prison in 1987 was actually an imposter. Skeptics point to medical discrepancies between Hess's known war wounds and those of the prisoner.
He was taken to Spandau prison in West Berlin, where he's been ever since. For more than 20 years, he was the jail's only prisoner.
Furthermore, The question of how a high-profile Nazi official managed to bypass British air defenses and fly directly to his target without being shot down suggests a high-level conspiracy or a coordinated invitation from within the British government. 7. The Lady Be Good ghost bomber. In April 1943, a B-24 Liberator named the Lady Be Good departed from an airbase in Libya for its first combat mission over Italy. It never returned. For 15 years, the plane was assumed to have crashed into the Mediterranean Sea, and the crew was listed as missing in action. However, in 1958, an oil survey team flying over the vast, desolate sands of the Libyan desert spotted the wreckage. The plane was remarkably intact, sitting 440 miles inland from its base. When investigators reached the site, they found the radio still worked. Some water bottles were still full, and the machine guns were still functional. But there wasn't a single soul on board. The mystery of how a massive bomber flew hundreds of miles off course into the deep desert without the crew realizing it is haunting enough. But the subsequent discovery of the airmen's remains added a layer of tragic heroism. The crew had bailed out in the middle of the night, thinking they were over the ocean. Finding themselves in a sea of sand instead, they attempted to walk to safety, surviving for 8 days in 110-degree heat with only a single canteen of water. Their diaries recorded a harrowing journey of endurance that defied biological limits. 6. The Massacre of the 4th Marine Division. History remembers the Pacific Island hopping campaign as a series of brutal, heroic victories, but hidden within the records of the 4th Marine Division is a dark, unexplained tragedy that High Command tried to scrub from the narrative. During the chaotic night, fighting on Saipan and Tinian, reports emerged of entire platoons being wiped out not by Japanese banzai charges, but by mysterious friendly fire incidents that seemed too precise and coordinated to be accidents. Witnesses spoke of strange signals being flashed from the hills and American artillery batteries receiving orders from voices that sounded suspiciously familiar, leading them to fire upon their own advancing lines. While fog of war is a common explanation, the sheer scale of the casualties and the subsequent silencing of survivors led to a decades-long mystery. Some researchers believe the Japanese had successfully infiltrated American communication lines using Nisei or English-speaking operatives, while others suspect a deeper, more internal cover-up regarding experimental weapons or failed tactical maneuvers that went catastrophically wrong. The official reports remain sanitized, often listing these deaths as killed in action, without specifying the source of the fire. 5. The vanished village of Joya Mayer. During the Japanese occupation of Southeast Asia, several black holes appeared on the map where entire communities simply ceased to exist. One of the most chilling cases is the village of Joya Mayer. Before the war, it was a thriving, albeit remote, settlement. When Allied scouts moved through the area in late 1944 to prepare for a counteroffensive, they found the village completely intact but utterly empty. Food was still on tables, tools were leaning against walls, and there were no signs of a struggle or a forced march. It was as if the hundreds of inhabitants had been plucked from the earth in a single moment. Local legends spoke of the villagers fleeing into the deep jungle to escape a coming darkness. But no refugees from Joya Mayer were ever found in neighboring regions. Unlike other villages destroyed by scorched earth policies, Joya Mayer wasn't burned, it was abandoned. Military investigators found no mass graves and no evidence of a plague. Some historians theorize that the Japanese used the population for forced labor in secret underground fortifications that have never been located, while others suggest the villagers were victims of a chemical weapons test that left no physical trace behind. As the war ended, the greatest secrets were just beginning. 4. The Nazi Gold Train. In the final, desperate days of the Third Reich, a legend was born in the tunnels beneath the Owl Mountains of Poland. Local lore speaks of an armored train heavily laden with 300 tons of gold, jewels, and stolen industrial blueprints that departed from Breslau to escape the advancing Red Army. According to the story, The train entered a complex network of secret tunnels near Xia's castle and never emerged on the other side. As the war ended, the entrances were allegedly dynamited by retreating SS units, sealing the gold train into the bedrock of Lower Silesia. For decades, the story was dismissed as a local myth until 2015, when two treasure hunters claimed to have found the train using ground-penetrating radar. The announcement sparked a global media frenzy and a massive military-led excavation, yet the search yielded only earth and stone.
Well, there has been a frenzy of activity in Poland after the supposed discovery of a Nazi treasure train,
as authorities try to keep treasure hunters out.
Despite the failure to find the locomotive, the mystery refuses to die. Geologists have confirmed the existence of massive, man-made anomalies in the area, and historical records show that the Nazis were indeed building a massive underground headquarters known as Project Riese in that exact region. Whether the train was moved, stripped by the Soviets, or still lies hidden behind a false wall of granite remains unknown. 3. The Dieppe Raid Intelligence. The Dieppe Raid of 1942 is officially remembered as a tragic but necessary disaster that taught the Allies the lessons needed for D-Day. Nearly 4,000 soldiers, mostly Canadians, were killed, wounded, or captured in a frontal assault on a heavily fortified French port that seemed doomed from the start. However, recent historians have begun to peel back the layers of the official narrative, suggesting that the entire bloody operation might have been a pinch mission designed to steal a four-rotor Enigma machine. The theory suggests that while the main force was being slaughtered on the beaches, a specialist commando unit led by Ian Fleming was tasked with breaking into a German naval headquarters to seize the coding device. If this was the true objective, the raid was a catastrophic failure on every level. The commandos never reached their target, and the cost in human life was staggering. The mystery lies in the extreme level of secrecy that still surrounds certain aspects of the planning and the specific orders given to the intelligence units involved. For decades, the disaster was blamed on poor planning and bad luck, but the possibility that thousands of men were sent into a meat grinder as a distraction for a secret intelligence theft remains a haunting prospect. The archives of the Dieppe raid are among the most heavily guarded in military history, leaving the true motive behind the carnage a matter of intense speculation. 2. The mystery of the Witch of Buchenwald. Ilse Koch, known as the Witch of Buchenwald, became a symbol of the absolute depravity of the Nazi regime. While her crimes were well documented, a specific and chilling mystery remains regarding the evidence presented at her trial. Survivors testified that Koch had a penchant for collecting lampshades, book covers, and gloves made from the skin of murdered prisoners, specifically those with distinctive tattoos. When the camp was liberated, several pieces of what appeared to be tanned human skin were recovered and photographed. However, during her subsequent trials, much of this physical evidence vanished or was called into question by forensic experts who claimed some of the samples were actually goat skin. The disappearance of the tattooed skin artifacts has led to a long-standing debate. Did Allied officials suppress the evidence to avoid inflaming public opinion during the delicate post-war reconstruction of Germany? Or were the stories of her macabre collection exaggerated by traumatized survivors? While Koch was eventually sentenced to life in prison, the true extent of her trophy collection has never been fully mapped out. Some believe the most incriminating items were smuggled out by former SS members or collectors of the macabre, and they occasionally surface in the dark corners of the black market. One final enigma remains at the very heart of the conflict. 1. The final days of the Graf Spee. The Admiral Graf Spee was a pocket battleship that terrorized Allied shipping in the Atlantic until it was cornered by British cruisers during the Battle of the River Plate in 1939. Rather than face a hopeless battle or let his ship fall into enemy hands, Captain Hans Langsdorff sailed the vessel into the estuary off Montevideo and scuttled it. The massive ship sank into the mud, and Langsdorff's life ended shortly after. While the ship's end seemed clear, the mystery lies in what was removed from the vessel before it went down. Eyewitnesses reported seeing several small launches moving between the Graf Spee and the shore, carrying heavy crates that were never accounted for by Uruguayan customs. Rumors have persisted for 80 years that the ship was carrying advanced German radar technology and secret diplomatic codes that were offloaded to a network of German agents in South America. In recent years, salvage teams have recovered the ship's massive Bronze Eagle and several guns, but the secret cargo remains missing. Some believe the most sensitive components were destroyed with explosives, while others suspect they were buried in the basement of a nondescript villa in Montevideo. The Graf Spee was the first great naval mystery of the war, and as it sits half-buried in the silt of the Rio de la Plata, it continues to hold on to the secrets of a captain who took his true orders to the grave. If this history fascinates you, hit subscribe to join us as we continue to unfold the world's most enduring mysteries.